Okie dokie. Well, I'd like to thank Frank Dominic from the illustrious app TikTok for coming onto the 905 podcast to chat with us today. Thanks, Frank, for taking the time to log on and chat. Thank you very much for coming here.
Always love having a good chat about some politics and whatever good stuff comes our way.
Yeah. So, I mean, there might be people listening to this podcast who don't know your account on TikTok, but you've built up quite a following, quite a personality on TikTok. And I'll paraphrase a bit, but I guess it's just a bit of just online critique, criticism, color commentary on politics, focusing, I think, on the provincial government. Is that an accurate take?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first started making TikToks, it was more like there was things that I was angry about or things that I wanted to talk about, and I was just pissing off my wife. I was posting on Instagram stories, and I was spending all this time doing research, and like none of my friends were really paying that much attention. I had a lot of interactions from a lot of my friends and a lot of my family, but I wasn't moving the needle on anybody who I needed to move the needle on. And like a lot of people basically disregarded my opinions because they knew me from either elementary school or high school, or they just thought, oh, well, he's a crazy socialist or whatever, which is funny because like I have a lot of people complaining that I'm not far left enough, but that's a whole other conversation. But so I started making random ones here or there. And you know, like I took a paternity leave. So I made some videos when I was with the baby then. And then when the convoy hit, I was compulsively watching every moment. And I had started covering the convoy on TikTok well before it became national news. People were laughing and saying, oh, they're not going to make it. These trucks leaving BC. And I was coming from day one. I'm like, these are fascists. These people are coming. They are saying that they want to overthrow the government. This is in their memorandum. We need to be taking this seriously. And I was also making fun of them as I went, but I was trying to express that. And everyone was saying that I was overreacting. And lo and behold, what was it? 3 weeks of, and I was up nonstop all day, all night, reading. I was watching the live streams on TikTok, reading live commentary on Reddit from people who lived in Ottawa. And I was making my videos based off on all that. And so I think I gained a big following from that to start. And I think that people really appreciated the work I was doing there. And then a week, I think, went by where I was like, cool, I can calm down. And then the Ukraine thing hit. And I was fully fixated on that for at least another 3 weeks. And then I realized I'm like, I can't do this forever. This war is going to go on for a couple of years. And so as I started to transition back into doing the regular content, which I was just doing a one-off here and there, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to, whenever I read the news and I want to talk about something, I'm going to talk about it. And because Doug Ford tends to be the focal point of my ire, I am more provincially focused right now, but I talk about Saskatchewan a bit when it comes up, a lot of Alberta stuff, federal stuff, like Trudeau pisses me off every once in a while too, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I like him in some regards, but not a fanboy. And it's funny because a lot of people who only see my Ontario content will be like, oh, why don't you talk about Trudeau? And then other people come in the comments being like, do you not see him tearing Trudeau apart every week? Like, because I do have my TikToks where I'm like, hey guys, like Trudeau really messed up here. Like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So I think you get siloed. Like I know people who like only see my TikToks that are about cops, and then they get mad at me that I'm always bad mouthing cops, and I'm like, but I'm not. Like I talk positively about cops in the videos that aren't just about misconduct. So people get siloed even into my own content, which is kind of fun.
I mean, you could maybe chop that up to the algorithm kind of feeding into those. Like that's how you get into their bubbles, I guess is the way to phrase it. I do like there are a couple of things that you talked about that kind of want to branch off on. One, going back to your commentary on following the Freedom Convoy, as I was moving through, like that thing was an eye opener for the country because it caught a lot of people unaware in terms of just what was going on. You know, the question was like, you know, how big is this movement? How you know, are they risking being violent or whatnot? My gut tells me over time that it's been revealed like they're not quite as big as we initially feared, but we're honestly very uninformed on it. But you kind of thought, you know, you caught wind of it early and you followed it and you went through it, and you know that's something that the mainstream media just never really picked up on. It was kind of like, oh, it's a fun little side story until they got to Ottawa and seized the city for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? That, you know, this new media, things like apps like TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, as much as people like to deride them, I find that I view them more as just tools, right? You can use
Yeah,
them however you
no,
want.
100%.
They're good and positive about that. It depends on how you use it and what you use it for. And you use it, I'm going to just say, to kind of inform, enlighten, shine a light on things that are kind of not that focused on, something that we try to do here in the 905er. What's your take on that? Like, are we kind like this? It's kind of a big, hot, like 10,000-foot question here,
There's a lot going on
but
there. Yeah.
it's something that it's something I'm very passionate about on our end. It's just like, how do we? I think the way that we consume and develop and digest news is very different. We have an old model that is just not adapting to new technologies.
Yeah. I mean, like, so for example, like one of the big things is that, so on TikTok, I can make TikToks where I am informing people about up-to-date information that I am seeing from residents in Ottawa that they are posting on Reddit, that they are posting in other confirmed channels on TikTok, etc. I can report that, and I don't report it necessarily as fact. I'm saying this is what I'm seeing online.
Right.
Can't do that as CBC. You can't do that as CTV, because you could be reporting, on something that some guy was saying in his basement in Buffalo, right? And we ended up seeing that a lot of the people who were supporting the convoy were Americans in their basements. And they were just the biggest convoy Facebook group, for example, and this is something that I reported on that I think the media did pick up on for a bit, but we kind of lost this trail. The largest Facebook convoy group was started by an American woman whose account had actually been hacked. And when they traced back where that hack was to, it was a Bangladeshi troll farm. And when you peel back the onion layer one more time, you find out that the Bangladeshi troll farm was most likely funded by Russia. So like, I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I believe CTV had done an article on this. I'd read this either on CTV or CBC. Like this is confirmed information that like there was this other undercurrent, but they couldn't immediately report on it. They had to do their fact checking. I could, as the onion started unpeeling, I could start talking about it, but they can't fully talk about it until it's all been confirmed. And by the time it's all confirmed, we've moved on. Our squirrel minds have moved on to the next thing that has caught our attention. And so I can put a spotlight on things when I have the opportunity to, but I don't think that people should be coming, because I make mistakes all the time. Like I mix up some world leaders in some videos, and I made a mistake about Michael Ford recently and how he's related to Doug. I remember that he had changed his last name, but I didn't remember that he was actually a blood relative via Doug's sister. And so I make mistakes, and I try to own up to it. But I think that's the value of TikTok and these forms of social media, is that we are not the mainstream, but that doesn't mean we replace the mainstream. There is a fundamental, important, valuable reason why CBC needs to be funded. There's a fundamental, valuable reason why CTV, as much as Bell sucks, Bell Let's Talk, you guys suck. I got a video about that. But there is a fundamental purpose that CTV provides that mean you can't do. But there are also things that mean you can do that they can't.
And I guess that's where I think where the public good kind of falls by the wayside in that is when we have like technology is more, I think, makes things more fluid and more rapid and it's easier to get to. But you're right, like I find it's funny. I find the mainstream media tries to play what you're doing on TikTok and how other people like-minded as such yourself trying to like list the up to date, because they're looking at, well, we need to be the first on the story, whereas they have, I know we were just discussing this before we came on, we hit record, they have the capital and the resources to say, no, let's pause a minute, let's do a deep dive into this, let's put a team of people on this to do the research to say what is, like, for example, with the freedom convoy, what is going on here? Like, is this like these people just all got in their cars and trucks and decided one day, no, I'm just going to go drive across from Alberta to Ottawa to protest? Like, there's
And
something
months
going on there.
before, yeah, and like months before this had been happening on TikTok, you would see, and I'm going to say this as it is, you would see domestic terrorists in Canada talking about how they were recruiting members of the Canadian Armed Forces who had been dishonorably discharged. And they would post videos to TikTok of them with guns, shooting these guns at targets of Trudeau, stuff like that. And now these videos, like a lot of people on TikTok will report that kind of stuff to the RCMP. So thankfully our police services were made aware of this kind of stuff, but this content was out there. The problem is it's a niche audience, right? So if I'm seeing a video like that and only 5,000 people have seen it, well, I know that it's not harmful because it's not getting out there, but those are harmful people. So like there's also that level to it where it's like there's a whole TikToker community, and I try to stay out of it. Like I'm friends with a lot of creators across Canada. We chat when we can, and I really like these people, and I love what they do, and they do different stuff for me. Like we all do different stuff, and a lot of them do get involved, and they do live chat debates with people in the Freedom Convoy, and some of them have stopped doing it because a lot of it just turned into anti-trans and homophobic and stuff like that kind of rhetoric. Like they weren't able to like really have those effective conversations. But there is communities of people online, and sometimes I talk to 10 people, and sometimes I talk to 1,000 people, and it might not sound on the grand scheme of 37 million people in Canada that that's a lot, but these are people that are tuned in, and then they go out and they talk to their friends, and so there is this ecosystem online that sometimes has zero effect. But my friends and family thought that I was going to have zero effect online, and I push out videos. I get about I'm doing about 3 to 5 million per month in terms of views on TikTok. And so, yeah, like I'm making an impact, whether or not people want to believe it or not.
Okay, so let's touch on that. Let's go on that off that that branch. Yeah, a lot of how you came to my attention was a lot of your criticism against the Ford government, particularly, I'll be honest, when during the CUPE strike.
That's when I think that's when a lot of people. That's when in Ontario, at least, I think I became more of an Ontario-centric figure.
And I mean, I figure we'll get into like the as I say the Doug Ford's greatest hits later on, but I do want to touch upon, like, it seems to me in this province right now there doesn't seem to be an effective opposition politically as there should be to his decisions. And I'm wondering, and I noticed like the power that opposition has shifted out of Queen's Park, and it's become far more decentralized. I thought there'd be a bit more opposition from municipalities, especially against the Greenbelt Bill 23, which there's happening. But there are people like yourself who are mobilizing, and they are stirring up that grassroots opposition. There are people who rely on you to keep them informed, to keep the dialogue going, to keep these issues in the limelight. And do you take a bit of responsibility on yourself to kind of keep that opposition going, to keep these issues kind of focused and central in some people's minds?
Yeah, like, I mean, so I'm only going to keep making videos as long as I'm still enjoying it. Like, and it's not always fun. Talking about bad stuff sucks.
Yeah.
But as long as I feel like I'm doing value, and it's not negatively impacting my life. Like during the break, I put out maybe 1 video a day at most. Sometimes 2 if I really felt like it. But I took the vacation as my vacation. So I know that there were still some things that were unfolding then, and I kind of put them to the wayside. Like I never talked about the girls who murdered the homeless guy in Toronto, and there's a lot of stories like that it passed me by, and I'm like, you know what, a lot of people have been discussing this. I don't need to cover everything. And when it comes to Ford, like like, for example, if you guys want other than Environmental Defense Watch, another great news organization that you can follow that will keep you up to date on environmental news, and specifically the Greenbelt, you're looking at the Narwhal, right? So there's a lot of journalism out there, like real good journalism, that can keep up to date. But what I do is I synthesize that information, right? Because I read those Narwhal articles, and then I deliver the content to people via TikTok. And I think it's just that it's a new way for consumption. It's a new way for people to get their news. And if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And I don't know if they're going to do it in a way that I think is beneficial to society. And some people think that I'm harmful to society. I've had people literally tell me that what I do is bad and harmful. Friends.
How do they view what you're doing harmful?
Because I will get stuff wrong. I will get some facts wrong. Or I'm a dirty socialist, and I'm pro-vaccine, and I'm anti-convoy, and I'm getting paid by the CBC and the left, and I'm a plant, and this and like people I know say this stuff to me.
Well, if you're getting money from George Soros, could you forward a little bit on my way? I could use
I think in total on TikTok I've made 12 cents.
Just so there you go.
I've made
There,
12 whole cents from
there,
TikTok ads.
there you go. And invest it wisely, and you can retire at the age of 120, I guess. How
Yeah,
do you keep up with it though? How I let's just focus on Doug Ford and the Ford government.
there's too much. There's too many
Well,
scandals.
that's the thing. This is a question I wanted to ask you is, how does here's a question to you is, when was Doug Ford's last big win? And by that I mean, like, every government, whether flash back to Kathleen Wynne, Dalton McGuinty, heck, even Mike Harris and Ernie Eves, each one of them can say, we got to win. This is something that we wanted to do. We told you we wanted to do it, and we got it done. Check that off the list. And right or wrong, whether it was beneficial or not, but they say we won. That was our win. And what's the last time Doug Ford could say that he did that?
He has a lot of wins, but it's not like wins that people in society like. It's wins for billionaires. It's wins for the elite, right? Like Mike Harris's wife owns the largest private nursing agency in the province. Congratulations, that's a win for conservatives and people who are in Mike Harris's pocket, and Mike Harris and his family. Like they're going to be making a ton of money off the new private hospitals that Doug Ford wants to institute. So
Right.
when you talk about like what are his wins, like it's a tough question because like he's got a lot of personal wins. His family's wealth has gone up. His network's wealth has gone up. So that's a win for them. When we talk about like a thing that everybody in society can gather around and say like that's a good thing, there have been a few things like that. And when I find those stories, I make sure to make a TikTok about it. And I say like, I'm like, guys, this is a good thing that the Ford government is doing, but it's never been a massive thing. And there's been a lot of things that I make a TikTok about, and people in the comments are like, don't get excited about this. Don't say it's a good thing yet. Wait for the screw up. And then a week later, I'm like, remember when I said that Doug Ford was doing this? We also didn't realize that this is part of the bill. And it's a thing that just hurts the working class, or it messes things up for people, or it completely negates the value of what he was trying to do.
Well, it's like the license plates, right? Oh, we're going to redo the license plates. Okay, great. And what nobody asked for, but fair enough. Great. Okay, if you get cheaper made license plates and new design, sure, why not? Except they all get out there, and it's like, well, this is just a waste of tax dollars.
I feel like people really forget how upset everybody was. Like this, like pre-COVID, I think people forget how much they hated Doug Ford over the gas pump
Right.
stickers and the
Yes.
license
Yes.
plate. Like he has done so much, and it's shock doctrine. It was introduced by George Bush,
Right.
and the Republicans, even Reagan era. But it's like they beat you over the head with stuff until you're too exhausted to talk about it. And even when you do get to talk about it, and even when it is covered, there's so much that you don't know where to start, and you forget about all of the bad. And Donald Trump's obviously the king of this, and I don't want to compare Ford to Trump because it's not a healthy comparison to do. But and even Trudeau does it at times, right? If Trudeau has a lot of things going on, they just keep dumping like update after update. And some of them are good updates, but it's like you keep getting bombarded with things until it goes away. Like the McKinsey thing is a scandal that I don't think should affect Trudeau. I think it should be affecting every province because Doug Ford's given massive 8-figure contracts to McKinsey on cold calls where there was no competition.
Right.
But we're not going to investigate that the same way that Pierre is pushing for the Trudeau investigation federally. But obviously there are things that need it's a lot. It's just
Well, like I'll be honest. We've talked about this a number of times. Just how the Ford government constantly puts forward, like policy after or bill after bill, and the idea is the parliamentary system that we have. You put forward the bill, it goes to a committee, and the idea is committees you're supposed to have experts come in. They talk about this is what could happen.
Ford government's not doing that.
Well, I know, but that was the idea. Like back to Bill 23, you'd have environmental defense come forward and propose we shouldn't do this, or if you want to do it, let's do it this way.
Do it in this way so that you're not going right over a watershed instead
Right.
of rerouting your highway so that it avoids a conservative MPP's golf course.
Right. Same as AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario wasn't invited to the table to say, okay, like there are better. This is your goal. There are better ways to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And it astonishes me. I look back at the CUPE fiasco, and they had that mentality of we're just going to push it through, and they didn't take into account. I really don't think they understood when they dropped the notwithstanding clause,
Oh
there were
my God.
there were conservatives who jumped on and said, no, this is not, you like negotiate with them. You find, come in low, play hardball, but this is, you can't drop this, literally the nuclear option.
And I think one of the problems though is, so we look at like, so when Trudeau does something bad and liberals get pissed off, they leave the party. When Wynne does something bad and liberals get pissed off, they leave the party. Same thing with the NDP, Horvath and Jagmeet and basically every previous leader other than Jack Layton, who unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to disappoint us. And I don't think he ever would have, but that's a whole can of worms. The problem with conservative voters, and this is both an American thing and a Canadian thing, and I don't have the expertise to talk about the rest of the world, but like they'll say, oh my God, like for example, when we go back to the convoy, I can't believe this is before Pierre was leader. It's disgusting that he supported them. I can't believe that he did that. I would never vote for Pierre, and now Pierre's leader, and people are so excited to vote for Pierre. People I know who said that they were disgusted by him and would never, ever consider voting for him. And so when we bring that to the Ontario level, I told my friends and family that when Doug Ford got elected for the first time in 2018, that me and my wife would lose our teaching jobs. And we did, because he changed the staffing size. He changed the classroom sizes. I lost my job. I lost my freaking job. And people were like, oh, well, we didn't realize it would affect you. I've been telling you it would affect me. And then when the next election came around, I told them, this is going to affect my work again. And then they get upset. They're like, I can't believe he would do that. And then they vote for him again. And so that's the problem. So Ford's always going to have 30 to 35% of the province, no matter what he does to piss them off. All of these unionized private sector workers who have Ford's back right now, a lot of them are still going to vote for Ford, even though they know that in a heartbeat, he would take away their rights because he's already tried to do it.
And I guess that comes down to the myth that we can't afford anything in this province. Like I do think that's one of the biggest myths that
we're not ambitious enough.
Well, and again, that's something we've come back to many times in this podcast, is that like Roland and when I used to work in politics, he's a volunteer. The idea was always incrementalism, right? We can't do anything too big. You just got to kind of move the goalposts and see where you can get. And I think that line of thinking has come to an end, and it's because of COVID, because we saw with COVID,
we can do
big planning things can be accomplished, and we can accomplish great things. We can vaccinate the entire country up towards, I'm gonna say 90% by now is vaccinated. We kept our economy alive. Like, we did not have massive layoffs. We've recovered most of the jobs because of things like CERB, CUPE, the rent program and whatnot, to the point where you were saying, well, if we can do that, could we not implement things like the UBI to, do away with Ontario Works altogether? Just say, no, here's this UBI. Just take that, do with it what you pay your rent, pay your bills, whatever.
And because we're doing childcare, we're doing pharmacare, we're doing dental care. So obviously these things are within the scope of possibility.
And I think that, but that's it. That's exactly it. It's that there's this talk of, we need to start thinking big and start planning big. But we just don't. Again, the right wing conservative mentality is like, oh no, we don't have the money for any of this. It's, how are we going to pay for it? I think the conversation on that, it's frustrating, because I look to the progressive political leaders in this province, and it's woefully lacking. That they're not putting forward to that ambitious campaign anymore. I mean, look the last election.
I talked to both members of high up in both provincial parties, just casual conversations, the NDP and the Liberals, and I've explained to them, like, hey, I'm reaching people. I'm not asking them to run. I was just asking them to listen to me as to how they can better reach people. And when they hear the advice, they don't want to take it, because these party establishments are doing the same thing that Pierre is doing federally, and the same thing that the PCs did prior to Wynne or during Wynne's tenure. That sooner or later, people are just going to get so pissed off, and they're just going to vote for somebody else. And it seems in Canadian politics that is the default mode of operations. Now, in 2015 with Trudeau, I think that was obviously, they were hoping people would get tired of Harper, but there was the Sunny Ways thing, and they had that great campaign. Outside of that, I cannot, in my lifetime, my 30 years in this province, I cannot name another provincial or federal election where there truly was that, like, inspiring, they're talking to the people, they know what people want. It's always just been the reflexive, like, well, they're going to get tired of the other people eventually.
Right. I just need to stick around until I can walk in the job. That's why I suspect I look at the NDP in this province and I get that mentality of when I hear NDP members voice, it's that assumption of, well, it's our turn now. Right. Like we've been out of the seat for so long. It's our turn. People are going to give us a shot. And say people are willing to vote for you, but you got to give them a reason why. And I think especially now, people are feeling very alone. They're feeling very frustrated because the cost of living is going up. I'll give Pierre Poilievre benefit of the doubt. He does have the right. He has just identified the right problem. People are alone.
Yes.
They're scared. They are frustrated. Things are not working out for them. Where he gets
no doubt he's effective. Yeah.
Where he gets it drastically wrong, though, is he says, "Oh, it's Justin Trudeau's fault." I say, to a little bit, yes, but only because Justin Trudeau's not doing anything. He's not going after the billionaires, the Ted Rogers, the Galen Westons, the
windfall taxes, stuff like that. Like there's options.
Like we have to reorganize it so that we give people a chance to breathe, to get their footing, and to just say, yeah, you know what, living is not the struggle that it is right now, and government can. I do think government can do that. It's a question of whether or not we have leaders to actually put forward that case and make it happen.
And there's always going to be a significant number of lobbyists and a significant number of insiders who will whisper in the ear, "Oh, what if it fails? What if this messes up?"
Then we're right back where we begin.
But they don't want to be the first country that implemented XYZ and failed. Right. So like one thing that I tell my students this, and I say this in TikToks all the time, is that Canada is one of the most progressive countries in the world in so many regards. But what Canada excels best at is always being the second to fifth country to do something. We are always like weed, number 2, gay marriage, number 2. Always we're the second. But looking at the legalization of mushrooms and looking at some other things, we're probably going to end up being number 2. Like we're always so close to being the leader, but we have this fear as Canadians of our image, and we want to do everything right. So we have to wait for somebody else to succeed or fail before we attempt. At least that's what my personal study of Canadian history has led me to view our country's main moral failing as. We're so nervous and timid about making the mistake. We just want to be the right. Like, yeah.
I will agree with you to an extent, because the UBI argument, which I'm a big proponent of, in case you haven't discussed
that. I am as well.
We were the first on UBI.
Originally, until we messed it up.
Well, until we just stopped doing it. Dauphin, Manitoba was the first test case for universal basic income. And we didn't realize until decades afterwards, we finally cracked open the binders and looked at the data.
And we said,
oh, it did everything we thought it was going to do and more.
And they kind of mimicked that program, I believe, in Alaska, where Alaska essentially has some kind of a form of a UBI program, and it is quite effective there. It's not really UBI, but they do give money to citizens, and it is effective at solving the problems in which we're trying to solve, which is when you're poor, you are desperate because you need to put food on the table. You need to pay rent, and rent is skyrocketing, and food prices are skyrocketing. So we're only making people more desperate. So people are only going, like, we need to be there for people. Like, people are so worried about crime and, oh, we got to increase the police budget and we have to do this and we have to do that. Or we could just, like, make it so that nobody commits a crime, at least not a crime such as theft and stuff like that, because they don't have to, because they feel safe and comfortable in their homes and in their lives, and they have a job they can go to, and they have money to make sure that there will be food on the table. Like, it's just, I don't get how people think, oh, well, these lazy entitled people with their handouts, and they don't think, oh, wow, there's a person who, if I was in their position, I might be doing the same thing. So we should make it so that they aren't in that position. Because I know, as somebody who grew up in a decent level of affluence and has continued to be lucky in life in that regard, if I grew up poor, if I grew up in a situation where my parents didn't love me as much, there's no way that I would not have fallen into drugs. Absolutely no way knowing my addictive personality, knowing who I was as a kid and who I have become as an adult, I would have messed my life up. And so like, I just don't see how people can't extend that olive branch emotionally to others.
I do think people are willing to. I think there are people. I'm an optimist at heart. Not every day of the week, I'll say, but for the most part, I'm an optimist. I do think people understand that people just get it in a bad situation. They get pushed up against the wall, and you get that fight or flight response, and that's what triggers in. I mean, it kind of comes back to episode we did with Carl Docksetter 2 episodes ago. He had a tweet on the thin blue line. We started getting into a conversation on policing and whatnot. I said, policing is by its nature a reactive institution. It's brought in after the fact to restore justice and calm to a situation. So you call the police after the crime is done to figure out who did the crime and apply justice. That's pretty much what a police is for. We're applying this reactive institution to what should be proactive problems: mental health, poverty, housing situations, all that stuff that really needs a more proactive approach to it. We in turn take this reactive tool and say, okay, fix this. And lo and behold, it doesn't work. It become, that's where you had police who are overburdened, who are stressed out, who are really saying,
they're not equipped to do. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not fair to them. Like, I think a lot of people think that I'm like anti-cop. I'm not. I'm pro an effective system. I have my issues with the RCMP. That's a whole other conversation. But like, it's not fair that cops are social workers. That is the main function of their job. That they're not trained for that. That's not what they should be doing. Like when our police do their investigations, we have extremely effective police in Canada. We are really, really good at stopping things before they happen. We are really, really good at investigating gangs. Like our police forces in Canada are highly effective, but we don't need to be overburdening them, and increasing their budget is not going to make that easier. What's going to make it easier for them is making a society in which there are less people who are going to commit those stupid petty crimes, like running around naked in a Walmart. Well, why is that person doing that in the first place? They had a mental breakdown. How can we reach that person and make their life better so that they didn't do that in the first place? Not how do we stop them from doing it again? It's how do we stop it from happening at all? And you're right. It's reactive.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the clock here, and I think we're coming up on the episode. You and I could go on for quite a long time on these issues. But Frank, it was great to have you on the podcast. It was great to pick your mind on this stuff, and I'm going to say we'll have a link to your TikTok account in the show notes, folks. If you don't have a TikTok account, get one. Sign up. Follow Frank. He's great guy to just kind of.
I'm also starting to try to post on YouTube and Instagram now at the Frank Domenic, but those really haven't taken off. But if people just refuse to get TikTok, the Instagram account is probably the best one.
There you go. Thanks very much, Frank, and all the best.
All right, have a good one.